Welcome to INFS 321 Information Sources. In session 9, we continue with bibliographies. You'll recollect we did bibliographies in session 8, and we looked at national bibliographies and trade bibliographies. In this session, we are going to look at subject bibliography, bibliography of bibliographies, universal bibliographies, and library catalogues. These are all bibliographies because they list materials available. So, subject bibliography. What is a subject bibliography? It's a list of materials that relate to a particular discipline or subject scope. And in a subject bibliography, they often attempt to select the most worthwhile books on a particular subject. You remember, once it's a bibliography, it sets itself limits of time, form, and origin. Subject bibliographies may be retrospective or current, as the case may be. Now, why will you use, or when will you use a subject bibliography? You use a subject bibliography because it's a very good place to start when you are collecting in a specific area, assuming you are the subject librarian for geography or for history. One of the areas one material that you'd consult is a subject bibliography in geography or history because it gives you a good listing of materials in that area. Subject bibliographies give you an overview of the discipline, which materials are very important for you to have in your collection. It helps you to build retrospectively as well. And it's really intended for research workers and others who are in that specific area. Let's look at some limitations of subject bibliographies. They are usually out of date the day they are published. And this happens because most of the materials will have to come by before the bibliographers in that particular discipline will have to go out, look for those materials, and compile into a subject bibliography. It takes quite a while in the compilation, and so it can be out of date even when it is published. Subject bibliographies are criticized for the subjectivity of the compiler, and at times when personal opinions vary, it can influence such compilations. For instance, there is a subject bibliography on information studies. Because the compiler is an expert in reference materials or reference sources, you'd find that a lot more information is provided for materials in that particular area to the detriment of other areas. So the subjectivity of the compiler is also a problem. And then finding some materials in the subject bibliography can be time-consuming and frustrating, and sometimes impossible if the item is no longer being published. Now, let's move on to universal bibliographies. What are universal bibliographies? Universal bibliographies happen to be a tool which tries to list all kinds of materials produced in all countries and in every language at any time and in all themes. Now, from this definition, you know that this is virtually impossible. Nobody will be able to list all materials from every country, in every language, at every time. But there was an attempt in 1545. Conrad Gessner attempted to list all materials in the whole world and named this particular resource Bibliotheca Universalis. But even with his efforts, he limited the publication to certain materials. In his publication, he had about 15,000 books by 300 authors in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, but he excluded materials published in vernacular language. So of course, a universal bibliography is very, very difficult to compile. Now, another disadvantage in the universal bibliography compilation by Conrad Gessner was the arrangement of the authors. He arranged the authors by the author's Christian name, and we know that today that is not a very good arrangement for materials. We use the author's last name, or what we call the surname, to be able to retrieve materials from any bibliography. So, having given you a few reasons why universal bibliography is not possible to be compiled, let's look at more details about why having a universal bibliography is very difficult to come by. There are a number of books which are recorded. However, you cannot come across a physical location of the material. So once you have that information, but you cannot retrieve or find that physical material to be able to recheck, it cannot enter a universal bibliography. Again, there are a number of languages which is so difficult to know how to even record them. And so it makes compilation of a universal bibliography very difficult. Arrangement of such bibliography also poses a big problem. And for that matter, we are able to find it very difficult to keep any universal bibliography up to date. Can you imagine the number of people, that means the resources and the manpower which will be required to be able to compile the universal bibliography? It will be very difficult. And so what are we proposing as an alternative to universal bibliographies? We are saying every country should have its universal catalog. Every country should have its complete national bibliography, so that when we combine the catalogs of national libraries, we should be getting somewhere close to a universal bibliography, even though it will not be a complete universal bibliography. But we should be getting close to a universal bibliography. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go on to look at bibliography of bibliographies. What are bibliography of bibliographies? As the name implies, this bibliography lists other bibliographies. You can call it the mother of all mothers because it will list other bibliographies. So the bibliography of bibliography lists bibliographies which direct readers to useful bibliographies through subject or individual or place. You are able to identify bibliographies on specific subjects because the bibliography of bibliographies will list bibliographies on different subject areas. And for anybody who is starting research, it's a very good place when you're trying to locate a list of works on specific subjects. We do have a general bibliography of bibliography which is retrospective. That is the Theodore Besterman's World Bibliography of Bibliographies. And we also have a current bibliography of bibliographies which you'll be working on, and that is the bibliographic index. Now, let's look at library catalogs because they are also bibliographies. What's a library catalog? A library catalog lists materials held in a collection of one library. Now, if it's a collection of materials from different libraries, then we will have a union catalog. So a library catalog lists titles owned by a library, and in some cases, those that they have access through interlibrary loan. That means you would have other libraries also listed so that you can see which materials they have in their collection. We call library catalogs bibliographies that represent the choices made by a group of people, usually librarians who are trying to build their collection. Now, these days, we have large institutions having what you call the online public access catalog, popularly referred to as the OPAC. What are the uses of library catalogs? Library catalogs help patrons and librarians to locate items, keep track of items, and even organize materials. And it is used for development of the collection. It also gives us, especially the librarian, an insight as to what has been considered very important in a particular subject area. The library catalog gives standard information or standard bibliographic information such as the author, the publisher, the ISBN, and possibly the price of that particular material which has been listed in the library catalog. All library catalogs, regardless of the format, whether the library owns a particular copy of the item, which works by a specific author are in the collection, which editions of a particular works are in the collection, all these are characteristics that are listed on the library catalog. So let's look at some advantages these days, especially with the online public access. The library catalog is online, and so no matter where you are, once you have internet connectivity, you'll be able to stay in the comfort of your own room or house, log into the library's website, and then be able to find out whether a particular material exists, whether the particular material has been borrowed, and when that particular material will be returned, and even the location of that particular material. So this is one big advantage of a library catalog. Another advantage of a library catalog is it gives you it provides you with a picture of what materials another library found important to include in their collection. It's a good alerting tool for collection development and must be used with other authoritative lists and reviews. So what are some disadvantages of library catalogs? They present a biased view. Remember we said it represents the choices made by a particular individual, by a librarian, and by that fact, the choices can be biased towards the person who is building that collection. It can be very limiting because it only includes the holdings of one or a handful of library collections. If it is a union catalog, then it will have several libraries joining. But once it's a library catalog, it's just about one institution listing its collections. And it can also lack authority in a subject area simply because the librarian has not found it good to read the system. By reading, we mean taking out materials which are no longer required in the collection. In some institutions, they read the collections every 10 years to be able to make room for new materials which are being purchased to replace the ones which have been weeded out. Now let's look at the arrangement in library catalogs. We do have two typical kinds of arrangements. We have the alphabetical arrangement and we have the classified arrangement. And within the alphabetical arrangement, we have a divided arrangement and a dictionary arrangement. Let me briefly explain what you mean by divided arrangement, where the subjects are separated from the title and the author entries. So when you have a divided arrangement, we can have author catalog, we can have title catalog, we can have subject catalog. Usually, we have the author title catalog in one arrangement and then the subject catalog in another arrangement. And typically, when the information, the cards are arranged, or when the information are arranged, it is usually in an alphabetical order. Then we have the classified arrangements, where the entries are based on classification numbers. So all the materials which are close and related subjects are brought together, and this helps people to be able to locate not just one material, but other related materials on a specific subjects. So classified arrangement, what's the advantage of classified? As I mentioned earlier, it brings collections which have related information together. And the disadvantage is that it's quite technical, and people will need to be familiar with your classification scheme to be able to retrieve information. Dictionary arrangements, all entries are arranged in in alphabetical order, and this is very easy for anybody. Once you know your alphabet, you'll be able to find the information easily. Now, there are certain components of a library catalog which are very important. These are terminologies, and so you need to know these terminologies. One terminology is a heading. What is a heading? The heading is the gateway to the whole entry of a catalog. The heading can be the author, can be the title, it can be the subject, it can be the series. That is the heading. Now you have another component known as a title area. Now the title area indicates the title or person or the statement of responsibility who produced that intellectual content. Then you have the edition statement, whether it's the second edition or the third edition or the fourth edition. Usually when it is the first edition, it's not written. So you would have second and third and fourth and subsequent editions being listed. Then the material or type of publication. Is it a slide? Is it a map? Is it an audio? Is it a cassette? So you need that kind of information on the library catalog. Then the production details. Where is it produced? Who is the publisher? And also physical description. How many pages? Are there any illustrations? Then you have what you call the International Standard Book Number. This used to be 10 digits, it's now 13 digits. So you have that number. And so when you scan that number, it should be able to give you the exact title of the material that you are looking for. ISSN number stands for International Standard Serial Number, and these are for periodicals. And then we have another component known as the tracings. Tracings are added entries. So under added entries, for instance, you'll find maybe the name of a joint author or joint authors, and then you'll find the subject headings or what the particular material deals with under tracings or added entries. Then the call number. Now the call number is very important because that is what you use to be able to locate the material on the shelf. It is a unique number given to each material for easy identification. Other important terms include bibliographic record. And I said in a library, in any bibliography, you have the bibliographic record, including the author, the title, the publisher, the date of publication. We also refer to this as the bibliographic citation. So when we talk of bibliographic citation, it means the author, the title, the publisher, the date of publication, illustrations, and what have you. We also have what we call the access point. It's a term or a name that can be used to retrieve the bibliographic information from a card or an online catalog. So the access points could be the author's name, the title of the book. And so in online, in the OPAC, we will talk more of access points. And the access points will be either the author, the title, the keyword, which is also the subject. We've talked about added entries already. Then we have what we call the catalog code. This is a set of rules for the guidance of catalogers in preparing entries for catalogs so as to ensure uniformity in treatment. We have different types of catalogs. So I'm just going to mention them. It's important that you go through all of them. We have the book catalog, the card catalog, the popular card catalog, which is still in existence in some libraries in Ghana. In BAM Library or University of Ghana Library System, we do have the card catalog, but we have migrated to the OPAC. So it's more of the OPAC which is being used. But if you come to the library, we'll show you an example of the card catalog. So this is it. And in the west wing of BAM Library, you'll find this old card catalog. There it is. We pull the drawer, you see the cards, you flip through to get the information from the author catalog. And this is an example of a typical card entry where you have the heading, where you have the author's name and the title and everything given to you. Now, most of these catalogs have the advantages and disadvantages. And you know from the card catalog, that big bulky thing, it is a clear disadvantage because it occupies a lot of space. We also have CD-ROM catalog. We have the microform catalog. And then we have the OPAC, which is now the most popular catalog form. And so with just the touch of a screen or a keyboard, you can get access to the most up-to-date information. And this is a screenshot of the University of Ghana Library System online catalog, which we call the OPAC. You can see the access points where to enable you to either access by author, title, or keyword, or even call number. Now, the advantages of the OPAC is that it provides instant response from the system. You can access from different points. So you can access author, title, keyword. You can actually, everything is searchable within the OPAC. It can be integrated with other operations. However, with the OPAC, there is a little disadvantage in that you will need to introduce your users to how to search the OPAC. But it is not too difficult. After a couple of training sessions, you should be able to search. And so the assistance needed by users at the beginning of the semester is very important for them to be able to use the OPAC. So for your activity, you will need to examine some bibliographies. One bibliography is a bibliographic index, which is a current bibliographic index. Then you need to also visit BAM Library's website to be able to search the OPAC. You need to practice it so that you are familiar with the content of the OPAC, how the OPAC displays its information. I want to thank you for your attention, and I hope you've enjoyed the session.